people ask, what should I say in a sales call? Well, I've really broken this down into a pretty simple framework. The first part is rapport. You and your prospect want to know that you are each human beings that are not out to exploit one another. You need to build a little rapport, but it doesn't have to be a lot. Basically, you just need to say something like, hey, where are we connecting from? Oh, Toledo? That's awesome. I always think of the show MASH because Klinger was a big fan of the Toledo Mud Hens. Great. Rapport built. You don't need to go any further. Then you need to go into this discovery phase where you are asking questions that are relevant to the thing that you do. And you are listening for problems and opportunities there. So if you are an agency that does web development, you might say something like, your current website, I looked at it, it looks pretty good. What are the things that are missing from it? Or what can't it accomplish that you really wanted to accomplish? Because that question, I would really like it to be interactive and have a bunch more video. Ta-da! That gives you the insight and the guidance to know whether or not you can help them. Now, after you've gone into that discovery phase and you've got some questions, and they're going to change based on your business, once you've got those questions answered, you are going to restate those things. You're going to say something like, as I understand it, you want your website to be a lot more interactive. And you want to have video because you think that represents who your client is and it creates a better sense of engagement. Is that right? They're going to say, yeah, that's right. Now is the time where you're going to go into your solution set. Because once you understand that the prospect wants video and interactivity, you might be able to say something like, hey, well, that's awesome. So we just did a site that used a lot of video and a lot of interaction. And here were the result sets. We saw that people spent more time on site. They captured more email addresses. They actually got more brand mentions on social media. And so is that all the site? I don't know. But since we had this emphasis on video and interaction and we saw these results, I'm not going to claim all the credit for it, but that was the result of a very specific process that we went through. So we thought about the client, we thought about the user experience, we thought about the journey mapping, and then we applied those multimedia elements with the end goal in mind. We just didn't do it willy-nilly. That's our real strength, where we are taking your desire for greater engagement and we are unpacking that and solving that problem one piece at a time in a very systematic, very predictable way. Does that sound like it could be a solution to your engagement problem? And the client's going to say, yeah, it totally is. And so that essentially is your solution, and they are agreeing with your solution. Now, that moment when they have agreed to your solution, we are going to rapidly transition into handling objections. You might say, Tim, they haven't told me any objections yet. Well, good, because you're going to get in front of those objections. You might know that for a company of this size, the amount that you are asking for to build an interactive video-heavy website is a lot. And you can say something like, before we get down into the specifics, I just want to talk about, as we go through this process, we are always talking about an investment in your business over time. The way that we really think about building sites isn't like, you give us a bunch of money and we build it and hand it back to you. No, we think about it as a process that we go through together. And so we might design something that is incredibly beautiful and powerful, but based on your budget and your need, we can incrementally tiptoe our way there. So we get from where you are now to really good to even better to the promised land over some time. And that way we find that we get more data, our design becomes more efficient, and it helps you handle the overall cost. What I've done is taken a pricing objection that I thought I might get, and I've defeated it by saying, hey, you know what, we've already thought about this and we've built a process so that pricing is never an issue. You want to start going through some of these obvious objection points, and you want to make sure that you have addressed that and it's time to move on. You're going to explicitly ask for permission, and you're going to say something like, now that we've talked about that, is it time to move on to the next topic? What we want to do during this call is we want to get people to give you permission to move forward. Now, I don't really care for the one call close. That might happen from time to time, but it should never be an expectation. So you have to decide what you want your next action to be. And your initial close, your initial success in the sales process is going to basically ask your prospect if it makes sense to take the next step. You might say something like, hey, this is great. I think I've got a really, really good idea of what you want. And I think based on our experience, we can put together a process that gets us to this really intense experience that we've discussed. But before we go further, I want to take a couple of minutes. I'd love to give you a little homework, and then I'd like to discuss this on a separate call where we can get a little bit deeper into the specifics. Okay? What I've just done there isn't sold them. I've gotten their permission to set up the next meeting, which is where I'm going to close them. Between now and the next meeting, I'm going to be asking them questions and getting them prepped. So I have all of the information in the next meeting to be able to say, awesome, you know what? Let me lay out our vision for this. And if they consent, then you say, great, does it make sense to move forward with this? Or does this accomplish what you're after? Then you can go into the negotiation piece. But essentially, the framework is rapport, discovery, solution slash problem solving set, objection handling, and a non sales close. That, my friends, is the perfect sales call.